As you saw from the thumbnail, my next sewing project is making Arwen's dress. A while ago I was fabric shopping and I found the perfect fabric for her silvery blue dress. But you may have noticed from the thumbnail that that's not the dress I'm making today. The other half of that story is that after I found the fabric and I had it measured and it was absolutely perfect, I was so excited, I woke up because I was literally dreaming about fabric shopping. Probably not the only one who's had that experience. And I'm also going to try and finish Arwen's dress in the time it takes me to listen to The Hobbit, the audiobook. Will I succeed in that? Meh, we'll find out. And my costume companion this time is Sky! Right, buddy? Sky is gonna be Aragorn unless I run out of time, because I'm gonna scrap that whole bit. I'm also doing this. See, I woke him up and now he's all excited. I'm also doing this entirely from my own stash, so I bought nothing new for this, except for in my dreams, of course. And I now have a pattern to draft, so let's get started. I grabbed some smaller scraps left over from this dress and drew out both necklines in different colored metallic Sharpies. I'm going to fake the underdress though. Sky is already getting settled in his new fabric bed. Em still loves her banana. I traced my draped pieces with a few corrections, removed some of the velvet fluff, and added some seam allowance. Ideally, you want to make a mock-up out of fabric with similar properties. This is the exact same except for the color. I look like cotton candy. Everything for Arwen's dress is patterned and ready to be cut tomorrow. The real question of today is, does the back need to be pieced together, or can I cut it out all at once? I don't think there's any seams on the original, but I am working with the fabric that I have, so I might end up with a seam. I'm going to cut out the front first because that is the most important visually, and see what I have left. Time to start the challenge. The deadline is The Hobbit and not The Return of the King, because that would not be a challenge.
What?
I didn't actually pattern the skirt because I know the length from my waist to the floor and used the width of my stretch velvet. I feel like I used a decoy fabric. Hey, Sky. You're a good boy. And Emmy's a good girl. I did have to have a center back seam, but I didn't have to have a waist seam, which is what I wanted, plus a big train. I cut out the mini underdress from leftover scraps. I'm getting ready to cut the red sleeves, and just an update, the dwarves are currently singing. I did some math, and my sleeves are not going to be quite as long as Arwen's, but I am using the fabric that I have. I have 70 inches of length, and it's 29, 28-ish, whatever. Times 2, so 58. So I'm gonna cut a half circle and a half circle, and I can't conveniently change the orientation of the circles because this is velvet and the pile is going in one direction. So I'm gonna have 1 and 1. I marked the upper arm radius and the hem radius and cut, which was stressful because I didn't have any more of this fabric. Sigh. I wish I could have done the floor length sleeves. From the scraps, I cut the upper sleeves section. In the movie, this is paisley, but I don't have any paisley, so I'm gonna overlay this gold fabric. It does stretch, by the way, but only in one direction, so I did have to redo one sleeve. Whoops. I serged the shoulders of the underdress and also the sides, which then I had to undo so I could add the upper sleeves, and then close the side and the sleeves. I serged the center back seam and the sides of the overdress, while Gandalf tricked the trolls into becoming stone. I did find 4 blue serger cones for the blue velvet, but only 2 red ones, so to keep the blue threads from showing, I zigzagged next to it with red. And also stitched the lower sleeves closed while the machine is threaded with red thread, although I'll probably serge this later. Ta-da! The crowd goes wild! There we go. Oh no. Oh, really guys? I was gonna say up next is making the bias tape straps. The dogs seem to have a different plan though. It's not time yet. I'm sorry. I'm gonna fake the paisley. The bias tape straps are supposed to be the same paisley as the sleeves, so I'm gonna fake it again. I grabbed a matching quilting cotton and cut 2-inch wide bias strips and a bit of the gold in the stretchy direction. I pinned it to the front of the overdress and stitched it down. Twice, because the velvet shifted the first time. I folded the edges over twice like normal bias tape before realizing that I had to hem the armholes first. And then I could top stitch the bias tape. Em is not a big fan of the kayak anymore, so Sky and I went kayaking and even swimming, even though it's mid-September and the water is a bit refreshing. Good morning. It is time to finish the riddle competition and also see what happens when you put on what's in Bilbo's pocket. Just a little movie magic for you. My husband found the One Ring while metal detecting in a river, Anyone else suspicious? I'm gonna put on trims today. I was gonna use this gold trim, but it's really way too tall and I don't really have a good way to shorten it. But I do have a lot of this trim, which is less tall. I'm gonna see if I have enough of this for the neckline and the sleeve cuffs. I'm like 2 inches short, which is really annoying. I hand the neckline while I thought about it. Gollum is panicking because he can't figure out what's in his pockets. I'm just gonna go for it because I'll just have like maybe a ½ an inch on the underarm that doesn't have trim on it. I don't really have another option. I mean, I could buy more, but that would defeat the purpose of only making this from stuff from my stash. I thought I'd be clever and just gather the neckline slightly to fit, but raise your hand if you see the problem with that, because I definitely did not. It took me from the goblins guarding the stone door, to Bilbo sneaking up on the dwarves, to escaping from the wolves with the Eagle Lord, to hand sew all of this trim on. Well, that was a fail. Time for plan B. Luckily, I'm already wearing an appropriate sweatshirt. For you see, gentlefolk, I had tightly sewn a non-stretch trim to a stretchy garment. Plan B was to cut a sort of facing from the tiny scraps of red velvet, including me piecing the back together. I double-checked the gold overlay stretch direction and basted it on top with plenty of ease. I'm not taking any chances this time. And I closed the shoulders of this facing. I pinned it to the mini bodice while it was stretched out on my dress form, and while the dwarves arrived 2 by 2 at Bjorn's house. I top-stitched this on with a zigzag stitch, and yes, I did trim the gold later, but this won't be seen except for on the arms. Whip stitches are slightly stretchy, so I used one to hand sew the top edge down while the crew set out for Mirkwood. My plan for the rest of the neck was to applicate parts of this gold embroidered tulle on top. Small parts, so they will still stretch. Oh, sorry guys, I can't edit anymore. Okay, he moved. I pinned each piece on the bodice where they looked nice, but before they entered Mirkwood, I ran into a problem. I'm almost finished pinning the applique on, but I'm having a slight problem. Yes, Sammy girl? Is there something you want? You want it too, huh? They weren't wrong, but I was so close. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm a little bit worried about finishing hand stitching all of this before the book is finished, because I'm 46% of the way done to the 11-hour book, which means I have slightly less than 5 hours left to finish everything. I think finishing the overdress will probably take 2 hours to 2.5 hours, which leaves me with 2.5 hours to hand stitch all of this, and hand stitching is not my favorite thing. And also, Sky and I went swimming again yesterday, but it's supposed to rain all week, which means the lake temperature is going to plummet, and it was quite refreshing yesterday. Sky started whining because it was so cold, but he still had to be with me, even though I had not forced him to come with me. We're probably done with that for the season. I stitched each applique individually so it would be able to stretch over my shoulders while the dwarves were caught by the giant spiders, and also where Bilbo finally named his sword Sting. And it's time to cut my thread. But how? Whatever will I cut this thread with? How about Sting? I do have a replica of Sting. And before it was mine, it was sharpened, so... Also, the spiders just named this Sting. It's an appropriate time to remember that I have this. That's right, I totally forgot that I owned a Sting. Have I mentioned that Sky is a little clingy? And while we're off topic, this is what you see, but this is what you don't see. It's not comfortable. Anyway, I kept stitching and stitching and stitching, all the way through being kidnapped by the wood elves, escaping in barrels, right up to Bilbo getting bad vibes from the Lonely Mountain. I also had to stop and make a Hobbit card for my cousin's wedding. Why did I have to? Well, here's the present. For the trim that goes along here, I have a couple options. None are great. I have this. It's the wrong color, and this is a nightmare to hand sew. I have this, wrong color. I have this, wrong color. I have this, wrong color. See a theme here. I also have this, which is much closer, but there's not quite enough of it. So I'm thinking I'll just leave a gap in the back because it'll be mostly covered by the overdress anyway. Arwen's dress is hand embroidered, so she wouldn't have to try and match trims, but I'm trying to make this a stash busting project. There's a gap in the back, but the overdress goes here. Yay, more hand stitching. I used the back stitch for attaching the trims because it has a bit more stretch. And while they were recuperating in Dale, I definitely didn't have any dog problems. Hi, buddy. Nope, none at all. Yes, buddy. Might I have my needle back? Yes, that is the tip of my needle. Oh dear. appears sewing time is over for the day. The next day, I put the overdress over the mini underdress to figure out how long I wanted the straps to be. While I was searching for the secret door, I stitched the first pass of the bias tape, and when Bilbo spotted the door at sunset, I stitched the second pass. And while Smaug was bragging, I undid all of that because it wasn't long enough.
What?
There should be trim showing here. I hand-stitched the 2 layers of the dress together, and rereading this book is bringing back all sorts of memories because my dad used to read it to me as a bedtime story. And my favorite part was Bilbo sneaking around with all the treasure while teasing the dragon. I used a blue zigzag stitch to sew the dress parts together while they found the front gate. I hope none of these Hobbit references are spoilers. I'd assume you've read or watched it before you clicked on this video. Ta-da! This part is all done. The overdress and the underdress are all one. One ring? That's over there on the floor. I don't have time to do this today, but next up is adding trim to the sleeves and then the big dramatic sleeves that are currently a dog bed. And a hem, and it'll be done! Yay! And then I left for my cousin's wedding. You know, the Hobbit fan. I'm back after a great weekend. My cousin's wedding was absolutely gorgeous, and her dress has inspired possibly the November dress. I also have some temporary tattoos from the wedding. I picked them because they match my September dress perfectly. And I went down early to help craft and set everything up, so I am exhausted. But it was worth it, and she had the best day. Alright, the plan for today is because the serger is currently threaded with blue thread and not red, and also the sewing machine, is I'm gonna hem the dress and then swap everything to red and finish the sleeves. I have about 2.5 hours left of the book, so let's get going. Let's get some mood music going here. To mark the hem, I grabbed a complicated tool, a yardstick, and did this. And that's my hem length. I put it on my dress form and marked 1 inch below that with my chalk hem marker. Now to cut this, I am going to use a pair of scissors. Just kidding, this is never gonna work. Unfortunately, these scissors do not glow when orcs are around. Either Smaug crashed down or Sky bumped the camera again. I laid the dress out to smooth the hem into the train. I serged the entire hem while Smaug attacked Lake Town and Bard shot him down, which I remember being a lot more dramatic last time, but maybe that's influenced by the movies. I swapped my serger to red thread and serged the lower sleeves, and since my red sewing machine thread was right here, I serged the lower sleeve on while 5 armies start to arrive. And then I put my sewing machine thread back in my sewing machine and hemmed the giant lower sleeves. I love this. This is so great. The hems came out a little bit more lettucey than I was necessarily going for, but I'm going to see if I can steam some of that out. But otherwise, all that's left is putting trim on just above the elbows. I suspect I'm going to finish this before I finish the book. I pinned the trim on while the Battle of 5 Armies started, and while I was hand sewing it on, it abruptly ended because I did not remember Bilbo being knocked out. But he did start the long journey home. Oh no, this is taking longer than expected. I better stitch faster. And before Bilbo gets home, I just want to say that I really enjoyed rereading this story from my childhood, and it brought back lots of good memories. I win. Woo! So, since I have a little bit of time left, I'm gonna fix this because this keeps poking out. So I'm just gonna tuck it under and slip stitch it there. And it's the final stitch! But don't worry, the road goes ever on and on. Oh, he sees bag end. My dress is done! Time for Sky's costume. Emmy was gonna be Galadriel, but she is now retired, so she just gets to be her delightful self. So last December, my embroidery machine broke, and I was short on making a few Christmas presents, so this year I am taking it in for service tomorrow, which is October 1st. So I stitched out all of Sky's embroidery today. I made 2 gauntlets, the Tree of Gondor, and a mini even star.
Look at that comfy boy. Yeah, I'm talking about you. You're a good boy, Sky.
It's a few days later and I have made my October dress. So I'm back to working on Arwen and Aragorn today. None of my dog clothes patterns have Sky's size, so I enlarged one of them and made a mock-up, and my very concerned model was very patient with me as I drew all the style lines that I wanted on it. So I guess I'm ready to cut the real thing now, which is a little concerning. I can't mess up any of the embroidered sections because my embroidery machine is not here.
No pressure, no pressure, no pressure.
I know Aragorn's main outfit doesn't have the Tree of Gondor, but the costume is not very recognizable by itself, so I added some kingly inspiration to his jerkin. I also left some seam allowance on one side for a closure. He has a red undershirt, so I cut red sleeves. In hindsight, he didn't like how long they were, so I will shorten them for next time. This is what I found to be chainmail. It's pretty good, right? Sometimes Aragorn wears chainmail, so I added some. This is another nerve-wracking step, because I cannot redo this. I lined up the bottom with my sleeve pattern with the bracer embroidery.
Ta-da!
I arranged all of my sleeve pieces and basted around them. I stitched the sleeve into the arm side, and then I stitched the belly and the sleeve closed. I'm going to stitch the belly seam, but up next I need to test this on my model because I don't know entirely how it's going to fit. And luckily, he woke up to come and bother me. You're gonna regret that, buddy. Oh, hi. I top stitched the jerkin seam because the other side closes with top stitched Velcro. This looks pretty good, right? Almost done? Wrong. We can't forget about the Even Star, who's a good little adventurer. I hemmed the shirt wedge and seam ripped the front of the jerkin so I could top stitch it in. And with the costume done, it's time for accessories. I made a mini crown and sword. And I'm pretty familiar with Narsil's details because I am making a stained glass version. I'll probably post it on Instagram when it's done, but don't hold your breath on that. It's a big project. Also, I'm playing LEGO Lord of the Rings on my Wii. It's truly a coincidence though, I just finished LEGO Batman 2, and this was next. Okay, on to the reveal.
That's when the colors started to change.
So this ended up being one of my favorite costumes ever, which is saying a lot because I make a lot of costumes. But it is unbelievably comfortable, and the sleeves are also super fun. This happened a lot. I'm hoping to wear it to the farmer's market dog costume competition this Halloween. Speaking of the dog, Sky did so well on his first real modeling job. I mean, he was a penguin for Mary Poppins, but that was just a sweatshirt. And don't worry, I pay very well. That's all for now, folks. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody!
Who's a good king of Gondor?